Welcome to ADTV, and today you catch up with us at Reef and Fisheries, and we're taking a closer look at the Maggot Feeder. Now, I'm sure the Maggot Feeder doesn't need any introduction. It's been used for years to great effect all across the country, and the best thing about it, for all manner of species. But there is always a couple of little things you can do to make the method even more effective. So hopefully today I'll show you a few of those. But before I touch on that, I'll perhaps talk you through when I think it's most effective, and that is this time of year that we're in now. We're not quite at spring, but we're not far off. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we've got rid of the worst of the conditions. The frosts are gone, the sun is out. I can't say how nice it is to see the sun out again. And that is when I think the Maggot Feeder certainly becomes the best time of year to fish it. And that will be potentially because fish will still be sitting in little pockets around the lake, and they'll be trying to have a little introduction into food, but they're not properly spread out like they would be in summer. So what the Maggot Feeder allows you to do is, first of all, you'd cast around until you could find those fish. Once you've found a little pocket of fish, you'd clip up, and then you can introduce every cast sort of 20 or 30 maggots in the feeder, and you can build the competition up. And just as they're starting to look for food, I think maggots, for me, are the most irresistible bait for them. Each cast, potentially leave it 5 or 10 minutes, build yourself a swim up, and hopefully you'd be in for a real good day. Now, looking at the rig, I keep it as simple as I possibly can. So to start with, I slide on a quick change swivel, and all that allows me to do is attach a various size of feeds throughout the day. So if I want to put more bait in, I could put a bigger one on, or vice versa, a smaller one, or a heavy weight if I wanted to cast further out. Then all I do is tie on a core and quick change bead, and that is where I clip on my hook link. So rig wise, keep it simple. It's more about the bait, it's more about the method. That's what's catching you fish this time of year. So now I'll go on to the three things. There's three things for me that you can get those extra little results out of your fishing. So the first thing to do, maggots on their own, they're brilliant. They catch fish all in wild, but for me, I like to flavour them. So the way I do that is I get myself an empty bag. I'll put in my maggots I want to use throughout the session, so a pint or 2 pints of maggots. And then in there, I'd put perhaps a cap full of a chosen flavour of your choice. And then on top of that, I shake on some flavour shaker. Now what that does, the liquid coats the maggots first, put the dust in, shake it all together, and that sort of sticks them to the maggots. So you've now got an extra appealing bait on top of an already awesome attracting bait. So flavour them for me would perhaps be number one. Secondly, I like to create some floating maggots from a hook bait. Now it's really easy to do. If you've never seen maggots float before, basically you get yourself an empty bait box, put a tiny bit of water in the bottom, just enough to cover the bottom, and drop in yourself a handful of maggots. Put your lid on and cut a square out, or get a lid that's got a square out at the top. So what the maggots do is, once they're in the water, they obviously try and crawl out, and as they crawl out of the water, they suck in air, and that's what makes them float. Basically, they crawl up the side of the bait tub, hit the lid, drop back in, come out of the water again, and they're bringing in more air. So within sort of 10 or 15 minutes, you've created floating maggots. If you were to throw them in the edge, they'd actually float. But once you put a hook through them, probably the best word is neutral buoyant. So your feeder would hit the bottom, and then your maggots would slowly flutter and just act more natural. And I think if it's a little bit harder and the fish don't really want to dig their heads into the silt to find the bait, just those neutrally buoyant maggots get you those bites that little bit quicker. And then the last thing I'd mention is don't neglect dead maggots. I don't know why, I don't know if it smells better, or perhaps it's the fact they're not wriggling in the silt, they just lay there better. They just tend to pick out those bigger fish. The best way for me to kill them is to seal them in an airtight bag and just pop them straight in the freezer. Leave them there for a couple of days. They won't come back round when you open the bag, and they're just perfect. Just put on the hook as dead maggots. Obviously no good in your feeder, you'd want some maggots that would crawl out, but on the hook, for those bigger fish, don't neglect dead maggots. So they would be my 3 best tips to try and make this method even better than it already is. So I'm going to try and put that into practice now, stop talking, get into the session, and hopefully we can put a few fish on the camera. Well, there we go. What a brilliant day on the Maggot Feeder. I've really enjoyed that one. Putting everything we mentioned into practice, and a great result. Bites kept coming all day. So if you're not out there already, get out there and give the maggot feeder a go.